Good evening to all and welcome to Baiju's exam prep. I am Basavaraj. So we'll be discussing what we have left out from yesterday. Hope I'm audible as well as visible to you all, right? Good evening to all. Right. A warm welcome to all of you. I have informed them about the annotated PPT, so maybe they will be settling out of today. So maybe they will be sending it today. So I have told them about annotated PPTs. So they will be working on today. They will be receiving. Right. So we completed a global warming and climate change, a very important module in the context of ecology and environment. Right. So we discussed all the basics and current related aspects of global warming and climate change. So revise them carefully, understand the basic terminologies, and once you are good enough in a basics, then you can make an attempt in reading any current affairs with very ease. So please focus first on the basic parts, basic terminology. So once you are good enough in the basic terminologies, then I don't think you will have any problem in answering any type of questions there. So there may be question on many such perspectives, like it may be about sequestration, geological sequestration, biological sequestration, footprints, blue carbons, carbon sinks, etc. So you should be good enough in those terminologies, like climate justice. So all these are the words which are very, very important in the context of your examination. Climate justice. So based on the climate justice, there is something called as common but differentiated responsibilities, with which we talks about the developed countries has to perform two things, that is providing financial assistance and technical assistance to the developing countries, right? uh, then regarding these terminologies, you have to be very careful about the perspectives. And regarding the morning batch also, I have told them, so I have informed them, because I am also a faculty where I'll be talking about the concerns and all. So I have already raised this part about morning class, so maybe they will settle it out by today only. Right. Done. So we have to discuss about something called as the pollution. Now, what exactly we are talking about in the pollution? Now, before understanding the concept of pollutions, understand that because of increasing of the population, due to tremendous increase of the population, high population, not only of India, of the global increasing population, then second one is rapid urbanization, rapid and unplanned urbanization. Then along with that, you can also say rapid industrialization, rapid industrialization, industrialization. Now, what happens in all the three cases? When we find population is high, rapid and unplanned urbanization, and rapid industrialization is there. So this will always create, this is always a create, you should always maintain a flow. You should always maintain a flow. So this will make a impact on resources. So what are resources? Natural resources are like water, land, air, food. All these are referred as important natural resources. So due to this, over exploitation of resources happen. Over exploitation of resources takes place. Right. Now you have to understand these perspectives. There should be a flow. So over exploitation of resources takes place. Now when the over exploitation of resources are there, like over exploitation of land for food, over exploitation of forests for their settlements, over exploitation of water for drinking, etc. So when there is over exploitation of the resources are there, then that will lead to degradation. That will lead to degradation of resources, or many resources will extinct. Many resources will extinct. So hence they are in the verge of extinction. They are in the verge of extinction. Like due to hunting, We find many biodiversity or many animals are in the verge of extinction. Many plants are in the verge of extinction, right? So we find they are degraded and in the verge of extinction. And hence, another problem associated with the overexploitation is, along with the degradation, they create something called as pollution. They create pollution because their capacity decreases. Their capacity decreases, and that creates land pollution, air pollution, water pollution, etc. Over exploitation will create these types of issues. So this framework you should keep in the mind, right? So this is how you have to define a flow. Over exploitation of the resources will create a pollution. Now, how do we define this pollution then? How do you define this pollution here? Now, here you should be very clear with one concept. The air what we are breathing, the water which we are drinking, it does not mean that it is 100% free from any type of particles. It will be having the particles, it will be having certain characteristics, but they are not harmful. They are not harmful. When their proportion increases, then that particular air, that particular water, that particular land will change its characteristics. It will change its characteristics, and those characteristics will make harmful impact on the living organisms, maybe plants, maybe animals. So such characteristics, when they are changed, then we refer them as a pollution. We refer them as pollution. So in a very simple, we can define that undesirable change in the physical, chemical, and biological, undesirable change in the physical, chemical, and biological characteristics of the water, land, and air. Water, land, and air. Air and air. Undesirable due to increasing in the concentration of the particles. Due to increasing in the concentration of particles, we find undesirable changes takes place. And these changes, they become harmful effect. They will create harmful effect to the human life. Or sometimes they may lead to death of the organisms. Sometimes they may lead to death of organisms. So they can harm and they can lead to death of organism. So this entity is referred as a pollution. So that is a definition of pollution. So whenever when you're writing your answer, please remember this definition. So it is something which talks about undesirable change in the physical, chemical, and biological characteristics of land, water, and air, which becomes harmful or sometimes can lead to death of organisms. That is, sometimes plants or sometimes animals also. We refer that as a pollution. Is that clear? Now, when we talk about the pollution, we classify these pollutions with certain particles which increases there. And these particles, when their proportion increases and when they become harmful, these particles whose proportion increases when they become harmful, we refer them as pollutants. Pollutants. Right. Now, we always talk about two types of pollutants there. One is biodegradable pollutants and second one is non-biodegradable pollutants. Now, in the context of biodegradable pollutants, take an example of paper, cow dung, etc. So here they can decompose very fast under normal conditions. They can decompose very fast under normal condition by bacteria or decomposers. Right. So they decompose, they break very faster, and hence they may not be much harmful. We refer them as biodegradable pollutants. But there are certain pollutants which we refer them as non-biodegradable pollutants. It means that there are certain, like plastic bags, mercury, or metals. You can break them, but you can't decompose them. So such types of pollutants, they become threat for the organisms, so which do not decompose in the normal period. They take millions of years to be decomposed. And such types of pollutants, they become threat. They become threat to the health and to the life. Health and to the life. We refer them as the non-biodegradable pollutants. And these non-biodegradable pollutants, when they enter into the cycle, then they create the threat. Now, what are the two terms which are associated with the non-biodegradable pollutants, which makes threat to the organisms? What two terms are there by which we can define the process of entry of non-biodegradable pollutants and increasing its concentration in the food chain when it enters into higher level of organization? Higher level of organization. What do you call that? Metal can means Pepsi cans or something where they are made up of, when they are made up of the metals. So what is the term which is given to that? What is the term which is given to that? Perfect. Perfect. It is bioaccumulation and biomagnification. So they lead to bioaccumulation, accumulation, and biomagnification. Magnification. Is that clear? So these are the terms which you should revise and link them with your studies. Is that clear? So microplastic is an example. Microplastic is an example. Is it clear? Now we move on to understand the first part called as air pollution. Now in the air pollution, the definition remains the same. Undesirable change in the physical, chemical, and biological characteristics of air. So here you have to use the term air, which becomes harmful and which can lead to death of living organisms. We refer that as air pollution. So you have to write a definition. You have to fix that in the mind. Undesirable change in the physical, chemical, and biological characteristics due to increasing of the particles. We refer them as pollutants. And they become health hazard and they can lead to the death of organisms. We refer them as air pollution. Is it clear? Right. Now this air pollution can be of two types. We can classify them into two characters. That is called as outdoor air pollution and indoor air pollution. Outdoor air pollution and indoor air pollution. So the moment when we say indoor air pollution, so indoor air pollution is the air which is polluted in the households and in the neighboring areas. Indoor air pollution is in the household or in the office premises, etc. So it means within the living areas. We refer them as indoor pollution. Now the major problem with the indoor air pollution is that we don't have sufficient data on indoor pollution. So lack of data are there. Lack of data regarding indoor air pollution. We don't have much data. Always lack of data are there. So hence we don't have exact idea about indoor air pollution. Notice outdoor air pollution. Now the moment when we say outdoor air pollution, this outdoor air pollution is seen which is outside the residence part. Now here the major aspect of the outdoor air pollution is it is mainly because of the industries. It is mainly because of the vehicles, right? So generally we say it is because of usage of fossil fuels, or maybe because of the stubble burning, residues of the crops which we burn, stubble burning, or maybe because of forest fires, or biomass burning, right? Sometimes they can be natural reasons also. Now any example of natural reason for outdoor air pollution? We can say volcanic eruption. Right. So these are the major reasons for outdoor air pollution. But we have much data which are associated with the outdoor air pollution. Large amount of data are there with reference to the outdoor. So sometimes when we say forest fire, it can be man-made, it can be natural also. We can put them into both the categories. You can put them into both the categories. Is that clear? Now, next is when we talk about the outdoor air pollution. This outdoor air pollution is generally seen in the countries which are economically developing countries. Which are economically developing countries. Developing countries. Right. And indoor pollution is seen in the countries which are developing countries and where agriculture is dominant. Agriculture is dominant. Right. So this is some rough idea about the outdoor and indoor air pollution. Outside and inside, we refer them as that. So generally, the major problem with the indoor or major sources of indoor air pollution is the burning of solid fuel. Burning of solid fuel. Now, what do you mean by solid fuel? It is like wood, coal, dungs. Dungs means cow dungs. Dung cakes, what we say. Cow dungs or dung cakes, etc. So these will generate the smokes. So hence, it is generally the solid fuel which is responsible for large amount of the indoors. Right. Now, this is some rough idea about the outdoor and indoor air pollution. Now we talk about, see, when we talk about that, I'll explain that when we talk about economic perspective. So this is very predominantly seen. Economically developing countries means where industries are seen. Right. Now, when we talk about the sources of them, when we talk about the sources from where they are released. So the sources of outdoor air pollutions are emissions from fossil fuels, constructions of the roads, power plants, transportation. All these are the sources. Now, if we take sector-wise, industries, which will concentrate 52, transportation concentrate 27%. So hence, this is a condition where we can group them into economically developing countries, economically active countries, and sometimes we can say developed countries also. So it is economically developing countries, plus sometimes we say developed countries. Sometimes we say developed countries. The reason is the developed countries will be having their own mechanism to reduce the pollution also. So they will be having their electric vehicles, they will be having other sources of reducing the pollution also. So they can minimize the impact as well. So hence, not all the developed countries. So generally we say economically the countries which are progressing, and certain developed countries, they will be having the problem of outdoor air pollution. Now, what are the sources of indoor air pollution? Now, when we say the sources of indoor air pollutions, they can be cooking because of the solid fuels. They can be poor ventilation. So many houses, they don't have the windows. So when there is no window, the smoke cannot escape. Sometimes when we are having the office premises, in the office premises, we find the glasses are there. They don't have any windows, and we use air conditioners. So the particles and other things will not escape from that. So that will also create a pollution. Now, where do you find the ACs? They are in developed as well as developing countries, right? So it can be because of air conditioners when there is no ventilation, or sometimes scented items which are there in that, or sometimes because of high density of the populations, or sometimes because of smoking. So hence, the indoor air pollution is seen in both rural as well as urban areas. It can be rural as well as urban areas. The reasons are different. In the rural areas, generally we find it is because of the smoke, right? But in the urban areas, generally we say it is because of the lifestyles. So we find the indoor air pollution is also predominantly seen. As I told, there is lack of data with reference to indoor air pollution. Is it clear? Now, next is primary and secondary Pet dander means when we keep many pet animals like dogs, cats, etc. So while maintaining them, large amount of the particles are released from that. We refer them as pet danders. And these we generally see in the urban areas, and sometimes we find them in the rural areas also. Is it clear? Then primary and secondary air pollutants. So primary air pollutants. So these are the pollutants which are emitted from the sources, and they remain in the same condition. So they are emitted directly into atmosphere from source, and they remain in the same condition, and they remain scattered in the same condition in which they were released. So they remain in the same condition, they don't change their composition. So we refer them as primary pollutants. Example, carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, etc. So these are called as primary pollutants. These are referred as primary pollutants, which same in the same conditions. When the primary pollutants undergo chemical change, when they undergo chemical change, due to reaction between two or more primary pollutants, due to reaction between two or more pollutants, we refer them as secondary pollutants. Right. And example of that is sulfuric acid, nitric acid, ozone, etc. So these are referred as the secondary pollutant. Right. So we can classify them as primary pollutant as well as secondary pollutants. Right. Both are there, primary as well as secondary. Right. Now next is, if you take the data according to World Health Organization, every year it says that every year on the global part, not only in India, on the global part, we always find that there are 7 million premature deaths are there. 7 million premature deaths are there. Because of air pollution. Right. Now, what do you mean by premature deaths? So a person's life expectancy is, say, 60 years. So he can survive up to 60 years. Now, if he dies because of accident or because of injury, maybe 10 years early, 5 years early, we refer that as premature deaths. A death which is not natural. Maybe due to accident or maybe due to injuries. So we refer them as premature death, dying before life expectancy. So World Health Organization has said that 7 million people every year they die premature death because of air pollution. And out of that, it has given the breakup that 4.2 million will die because of outdoor air pollutions, and the remaining due to indoor air pollution. That is, remaining 2.8 million because of indoor air pollution. Right. So this is the data which is alarming in the context. Now, region wise, when we say region wise, means which regions in the world are something which are more dangerous in the context of the deaths. If you take around 2 million deaths, they die in the Southeast Asia region. Now, what is the Southeast Asia region? Southeast Asia includes the countries of China, it includes the countries of Japan, and it includes the countries of Australia and neighboring parts. Then it also says that another 2 million in the Western Pacific, another 2 million in the Western Pacific. So this is a region which is more dangerous in the context of the deaths. So totally 4 million deaths are there in this region. 4 million deaths are there, which includes India, China, New Zealand, Australia, Indonesia, Sumatra, and all. So it means that these areas are there where we find agriculture is dominant. These areas are there where we find economic activity is also dominant. Economic activity is also dominant. Plus, it is an area where population is also very high. It is an area where population is also very high. Take China and India, two most populous countries in the world are in this area. So 4 million deaths are in this particular regions only. Then it also says that nearly 1 million are in the African part. So here we find 1 million deaths which are in the Africa. Right. So when we talk about here, it is about region wise. It's not about developing or developed. So hence I told that it is economically dominant area. Is it clear? So in spite of that also it is having. So that's why in the beginning I told that not all the developed countries are very clear. So many developed countries, they are having the major problem. If you take North America, so North America is a developed country, but there we find the deaths are comparatively less deaths are there. Why? Because of medical facilities, because of the mode of living which is there, right? So hence this is an alarming data which is given. This is an alarming data which says that every year around 7 million deaths are there, and the predominant deaths are in these two parts, which we refer them as Western Pacific and Southeast Asia. Western Pacific and Southeast Asia, where the large number of deaths are there. So please remember region wise when they ask the question. Right. Now next we move on to principal air pollutants. So these are the facts which can be asked in the prelims. In the context of carbon compounds which are released by burning of the fossil fuels, right? So they can be something called as carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, etc. Carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, etc. Then sulfur compounds, thermal power plants and industries. So they can be sulfur dioxide, or sometimes they combine with other and create a secondary pollutant like sulfuric acid, etc. Right? Primary and secondary one. Is that clear? Then nitrogen oxides. So they are from automobiles, industries, agriculture, and other activities. So when we say nitrogen oxides, they can be many types, like nitrous oxide, or they combine with other pollutants and they form nitric acid, etc. Right? So they are very dangerous in the perspectives. Now when we talk about nitrous oxide, what is the another name for nitrous oxide? Another name for nitrous oxide, we refer that as laughing gas. Perfect. We refer that as laughing gas. But you should remember that as the name is there, laughing gas, but it makes us to cry. The reason is that this nitrous oxide is a potential greenhouse gas. It is a potential greenhouse gas. If they ask in the prelims, yes, it is a potential greenhouse gas. And this nitrous oxide is also ozone depleter. So it means that it is more dangerous. It is both activities which are seen. Is it clear? Then we talk about something called as ozone. And here we are talking about ground ozone, which is a pollutant. Good ozone is at higher altitude. So here we will be discussing ground ozone, which is pollutant, which is a secondary pollutant. It is a secondary pollutant. We'll be discussing that in detail. Then fluorocarbons from industries, insecticides, etc. And then particulate matters. We'll discuss particulate matter also in detail. So ozone and particulate matter, we will be discussing them in detail. So these are the principal air pollutants. Now sometimes they may ask in the prelims from where they are released and what are their health impact. From where they are released and from where you have to be, what are their health impact. So carbon monoxide, its sources. Ozone, nitrous oxide, and their health problems. So please read them carefully. Sometimes they may ask in the prelims. In the prelims, they may ask them their sources and from where they are released and what are their health impacts. So please read them carefully. Read them carefully. So these are the pollutants and their significant impact. So that is referred as health hazards. Yes, you have to at least remember few. In prelims, they may ask. You have to remember, if they ask in the examination, you can mark them correctly. It's better if you can remember at least few, so that you can take approach to mark them correctly. Right. So at least remember few. Done. Now next we talk about something called as ground ozone and the smog. Now first, what is ground ozone? What is ground ozone? So ground ozone is a pollutant which is a health hazard. And this ground ozone is a secondary pollutant. It is a secondary pollutant. So it means it is formed by combination. Now how it is seen? So it is formed by a combination or chemical reactions. That is, when nitrous oxide or nitrogen oxide, when it combines with volatile organic compound in the presence of sunlight, that will create a ground ozone. In the presence of volatile organic compound. Right. Now, what are these volatile organic compounds? They are something which we use them in perfumes, scents, etc. Right. And their characteristics make them more dangerous one, because they evaporate at very low temperature. So it means they disperse very fast. If you take a scent in your room, when you keep that scent in the bottle, it will not be having much amount of smell. The moment when you open the cap, it will disperse very fast. The smell will spread. So hence they are having low evaporation. So low temperature, and in that low temperature they can evaporate. Second, if you put a scent in the water, it will not make a soluble. So hence they are low water soluble. It will not dissolve in the water. So low water solubility. It means they will not dissolve in the water. So they will be having flotation perspective. Third one is they are having high vapor pressure. So hence these volatile organic compounds, they easily spread in the Earth's atmosphere, and when the nitrous oxide combines with them, then they will create ground ozone, which is a very dangerous and fatal type of the pollutant. Now, next is something called as the smog. Right. Now, what is the smog? Now, generally, when we talk about the smog, remember the smog is something which is having a combination of two terms. That is fog plus the smoke. So these two words combines and they create the smog. Right. Now, fog is not a pollutant. fog is not a pollutant, but when it combines with the smoke, then it becomes a smog. Then smoke is referred as a pollutant. Smoke is a pollutant. So fog is not a pollutant, but the smoke which is released, when it combines with that, then we find them as a smog. Now, when we talk about the smogs, we can define the smog into two types. The smog into two types. Right. The first one is referred as the classical smog. Classical smog. It is also referred as London smog, as it was highlighted or seen for the first time there. And this London smog, when we see, the major contributing pollutants here are sulfur. It is due to sulfur and its product. And generally, it is dominant during winter season. It is dominant during the winter season, like Delhi winter pollution. The second type of the smog is referred as the photochemical smog. Photochemical smog. And it is also referred as Los Angeles smog. It is also referred as Los Angeles smog. Right. Now here you should be very careful. In this Los Angeles smog, whatever may be pollutants are there, one pollutant should be ground ozone. So ground ozone is mandatory. Ground ozone is mandatory. So then only we refer that as photochemical smog. So in the classical smog, you don't find the ground ozone. But if it is photochemical smog, then mandatorily it should have a ground ozone. So hence, it is formed or developed in the summer or in the daytime. It is found in the daytime or in the summer condition. We refer that as the photochemical smog. Is it clear now? So please remember the two terms, classical smog as well as photochemical smog. So many students make a mistake. Many students make a mistake. So in the smog, if it is photochemical smog, then and then only it will be having something called as the ozone, or else it will not have any type of the ozone. Clear? Right. So photochemical, the reason is photochemical reaction which takes place there. Photochemical reaction which takes place in the presence of sunlight. Right. Now, these are volatile organic compounds. In many areas we find varnish, paints, tobaccos, etc. Generally, we refer them as benzenes, toluenes, formaldehydes. Formaldehydes. So if you keep them in your room, they will spread the smell very fast. So these are referred as the volatile organic compounds. Is that clear? Right. Now, please go through them very carefully. Please go through them carefully. Next is particulate matter. Now, how do you define a particulate matter? So particulate matter, in a very simple way, we say it is a complex mixture of solid and liquid particles. Complex mixture of which are floating on the air. We refer them as suspended. Complex mixture of suspended, solid and liquid particles. Right, solid and liquid particles which are in semi-equilibrium with the surrounding area. Which are in semi-equilibrium. Semi-equilibrium with surrounding area. With surrounding area. We refer them as this particulate matter, right? So anything which is solid and liquid particles which are floating in the air, suspended in the air, and which are in the semi-equilibrium with the surrounding area or surrounding atmosphere or surrounding air, we can say, we refer that as the sus particulate matter. And these particulate matters, they are classified on the basis of their size. They are classified on the basis of their size, right? The bigger particles, if the particles are bigger, the bigger particles are referred as suspended particulate matters, SPM. That is suspended particulate matter. Suspended particulate matter, right? Suspended particulate matter, right? Now, when we talk about the suspended particulate matter, as they are bigger one, they can settle to the earth or surface very easily because of their size. Because of their size, they settle to the surface very fast and easy due to their weight. Due to their weight, they settle to the ground very easily and fast. So hence, they may not be more hazardous. So they are not much dangerous as they settle to the ground. So they are having less harmful effect. So less harmful effect. Because they reaches to the ground very easily. But there are certain particles which are still smaller than that. There are particles which are very small. Very small. So we refer them as respiratory suspended particle matter, RSPM. We refer them as respiratory suspended particulate matter, or simply we refer them as PM 2.5 and PM 10, or sometimes we use the abbreviations RSPM 2.5 and RSPM 10. Now what does this 10 and 2.5 says? So PM 2.5 means the size is less than 2.5 micron. 2.5 means it talks about the size which is less than 2.5 micrometers. And if it is PM 10, it means that it is less than 10 micrometers. Less than 10 micrometers. So the numbers defines their sizes. And if you take them, this is the size of a human hair. Size of a human hair. Now if you take PM 10, so compared to the human hair size, this is the size of particulate matter 10. And compared to human hair, we find this is the size of PM 2.5. PM 2.5. So hence, these are more dangerous. These are more dangerous. Why? Because they can easily enter into the nostrils. They can easily enter into the nostrils, and they can be very fatal when they reach to the lungs. They reach to the lungs. Now, among them, which one is more dangerous, PM 10 or PM 2.5? Among these two, which one is more dangerous, PM 10 or PM 2.5? If you take the size of that, right? So PM 2.5, particulate matter 2.5. So hence, respiratory suspended particulate matter or PM 2.5 is considered as one of the major killer. So hence, PM 2.5, particulate matter 2.5 is considered as one of the major killer of air pollution. Now, from where it is released? Very strongly. This particulate matter 2.5 is released from construction activities, automobiles, fossil fuels, smokes, etc. So it is released by all types of activities, construction activities, smokes, right? So wherever construction activities are there, like Delhi or any developing countries, we find PM 2.5 will be very high. Wherever we find the fires are there or stubble burnings are there, PM 2.5 will be more there, right? So dust wherever is there, so we find PM 2.5 will be very, very high. Is it clear? So within the particulate matter, you should remember we classify them into two categories. One is referred as only suspended particulate matter, and suspended particulate matters are not referred as the major threat. Suspended particulate matters are not referred as major threat because their size is bigger, they can settle to the ground very easily. But within the particulate matter, the respiratory suspended particulate matter 2.5 and 10 are more dangerous, and within these two, RSPM 10 and RSPM 2.5, RSPM 2.5 is most dangerous. So when you're writing, either you can use them PM 2.5 or you can use RSPM 2.5 also. So there is no harm if you mention RSPM or only PM there. Is it clear? And this PM 2.5 is predominantly seen in the developing countries. Predominantly in the developing countries. Right. So this is about particulate matters. Now next, we move on to something called as harmful effects of air pollution. Now, the harmful effects of air pollutions are they have a huge impact on human health, where they will create many diseases like asthma, strokes, etc. Or they can be very harmful to the agriculture. So how they are harmful to the agriculture? Can anybody mention how they are harmful to the agriculture? Air pollution, how the dust is harmful to the agriculture? How it is harmful to agriculture? Now these dust particles, when they fall on the leaf, what will happen to the photosynthesis? Will it increase or decrease when the dust particles cover there? So it means that it will affect photosynthesis. And hence the yield will be very less. Productivity will be very, very less, right? So they harm the agricultural crops. Then acid rain, we'll discuss that in detail. Now, global warming and global dimming. We have discussed in detail about global warming, and next we have to discuss about global dimming. Now here, when we talk about global warming and global dimming, it is associated with something called as aerosols. So what are aerosols? Aerosols are the solid particles and liquid particles. Combinedly, we refer them as aerosols. Solid particles and liquid particles in the atmosphere, combinedly, we refer them as aerosols. Now, these aerosols are of two types. One is white aerosols, or we refer them as light aerosols. Example, sulfur. Now, another type of aerosols are referred as dark aerosols. And in this dark aerosols, if you are studied in your geography or somewhere, these dark aerosols, again, they can be referred as two categories, right? So we refer them as black carbons and brown carbons. Black carbon and brown carbon. Have you heard about these? Black carbon and brown carbon, which are referred as dark aerosols. Now, in these one, white aerosols and dark aerosols, which will concentrate for global warming? White aerosols or dark aerosols? Right. So these dark aerosols is associated with global warming. Right. And white aerosols are associated with global dimming. Why? Because white aerosols will have high albedo. They have high albedo. Albedo means reflectivity. So this is very simple thing. Once it is printed in your mind, you can write them at any time. So it means they're having high reflectivity. I'll explain what is global dimming. Understand this basics. Now, black carbon is released by burning of fossil fuels. Black carbon is released when we burn fossil fuels. Right. Brown carbon is released by burning of biomass. Fossil fuels means petrol, diesel, where high temperature, high intensity burning is done. Brown carbon by biomass. Can you give any example of biomass burning? Examples of biomass burning. It can be forest fire, it can be stubble burning, etc., which adds brown carbon. So please remember this data in your mind. This you should keep. Yeah, the pareli or the stubble burning. Is it clear? Then something called as ozone. We have discussed about ozone depletion. Then this will affect biodiversity. Large amount of animals will be affected by that. Right. So it will affect the weather. So generally, whenever these aerosols are there, morning the weather is very pleasant. Suddenly in the evening the temperature increases. Morning the temperature is pleasant. Suddenly in the evening we will find heavy rainfall. So this changes the weather patterns. So it changes the weather patterns there. And smog we have already discussed. Smog we have already discussed. Uh, Dung cake, yes, this dung cake is associated with brown carbon. So brown carbon means less intensive burning, or low intensive burning. And fossil fuels means high intensive burning, high intense burning. Is that clear? So keep them crystal clear in your studies. Is that clear? Okay. So this is some rough idea. Now next we move on to global dimming. So global dimming is also referred by one more term called as aerosol masking. Aerosol masking. Right. So it is due to white aerosols or light aerosols. And these white aerosols or light aerosols, they are released in both the ways, naturally, example, during volcanic activity, or sometimes man-made, like vehicles, industries, etc. So we refer them as white aerosols. Or we refer them as light aerosols. Right. Now, these white aerosols, when they are scattered in the Earth's atmosphere, so this is the surface of an Earth, and here we find the white aerosols are scattered. In the Earth's atmosphere. Now, when we talk about insolation, incoming solar radiation, when they collide with the white aerosols, so most of the insolation is reflected back. Very few radiations will reach to the Earth. Most of them is reflected because these white aerosols, they are having high albedo. So when they reflect back the radiations, the temperature in this area, will be less, or it will be low. It is something like this. If you are having a roof and if sunlight is there, if you remove the roof, then the intensive heating will take place. If you cover that with the roof, then the radiation will hit that and reflect back. You will feel a cooling effect. Above the roof, it may be warm, but you will feel the cooling effect. And this is what the aerosols does in the Earth's atmosphere. So they reflect back the insolation, and this area, they will have low temperature. And we refer that as global dimming. Global dimming. So global dimming is completely opposite of the global warming. Global warming is due to presence of greenhouse gases. In the global dimming, you don't have greenhouse gases. So no greenhouse gases. It is because of white aerosols. It is because of white aerosols. It does not have any type of greenhouse gases. Now here, when we talk about the perspective of global dimming or greenhouse gas, or sorry, the albedo part, generally when we talk about that, there is an average drop of 22% of insolation. There is an average drop of 22% of insolation on the earth. It means that 22% of the insolation is reflected back by the earth system because of white aerosols. Is it clear? So please remember this. Average drop of 22%. At present, we can see more amount of white aerosols, more amount of reflectivity will be there. Is it clear? Yes, white aerosols is counter to global warming. Yes, we can say it is counter to global warming, opposite of global warming. So hence we say global warming is opposite of global dimming. Both are the two faces of the same perspectives. So one is due to presence of greenhouse gas and one is due to presence of white aerosols. Is it clear? So if they ask what is global dimming, keep this in the mind. Global dimming. Now, when we talk about the global dimming, what are its harmful impacts? What are its negative impacts? The first one is when the global dimming is there, what will happen to the evaporation rate of the green plants? Will it increase or decrease? Whenever the global dimming is there, when the sun's insolation is not reaching to the earth, what will happen to the evaporation? It will decrease. So hence it will decrease the food productivity. So it will decrease the food productivity. It will decrease the yield. So when the yield is reduced in a longer period of a time, it will create food scarcity. In the longer period, it will create food scarcity. Food scarcity. Second, when we talk about this impact of the global dimming, now will it increase the rainfall or will it decrease the rainfall? This global dimming, will it increase the precipitation or will it decrease the precipitation? Right. So what is its impact on precipitation? Right. So why it decreases? Why it decreases precipitation? Because the lack of evaporation. So when there is less evaporation, so this will decrease. So it will decrease the precipitation. Now when there is a decrease in the precipitation, that will lead to drought. And this we have already experienced in 1980s. Example, in 1980s. So such type of drought is experienced or was experienced in the Sahel region. Now where do you find Sahel? It is in South Africa. Third, it can also affect monsoon. Because of its rate of evaporation. So it will affect the monsoon perspective also. Right. So these are referred as the impact of the global dimming. Yes. So hence we say ideal. So that's what I told, that anything which is more or anything which is less, both are dangerous. So generally, hence we say ideal values are important. While defining ecosystem also, I told that ideal values are important. Maximum and minimum range. So that is called as ecological amplitude. So refresh your brain. Ecological amplitude. So they will be productive only with the minimum and maximum range. If it is beyond that, then it will collapse. So here also the same thing. If the temperature is below minimum and above maximum, whole ecosystem will collapse. Is that clear? So this is how you have to link your studies. So there should be an ideal values. It is something like this. When you are eating prasad, if you eat prasad more, then that leads to diabetes. So you should have an optimum values. If you are studying for 24 hours, if you are studying for 24 hours without any type of break, then your brain will collapse. So there should be an ideal optimum values, and within that ideal optimum values, which are targetable, which can be reachable, only in that the productivity will be very, very high. It is not only in the ecosystem, it is for human and all that. So you have to decide what is our optimum values, what is your optimum value. So based on that, you can make your productivities. Here also the same thing is seen, right? This is what we refer them as global dimming. Now don't confuse between global warming and global dimming. Both are two different entities. Next, we move on to acid rain. Now what is acid rain? So acid rain is a rainfall where the pH value is less than 5.6. It is a rainfall which is having the pH value which is less than 5.6. Anything which is less than 5.6, we refer them as acid rain. What is the reason for acid rain? Now, the reason for acid rain is in the Earth's atmosphere. In the Earth's atmosphere. So generally, because of the natural reasons. Natural reasons are earthquakes, the fires, the forest fires, etc. Right? We find large amount of the nitrogen dioxide is released, sulfur dioxide is released in the Earth's atmosphere, or sometimes it can be man-made. Man-made, that is from industries, vehicles, etc. Vehicles, etc., where large amount of nitrogen is released or large amount of sulfur is released. So nitrogen is released, sulfur is released, right? Now what happens because of both natural as well as man-made? So here this nitrogen which is released, that is nitrogen oxide which is released, it comes in contact with the water, and that will create a secondary pollutant called as sulfuric acid. Sorry, that will create nitric acid. Nitric acid. In the same way, the sulfur or sulfur oxide, it comes in contact with the water, and it will create a secondary pollutant called as sulfuric acid. Sulfuric acid. And the combined effect of that, when it falls in the form of precipitation or rainfall, we refer this as acid rain. We refer that as acid rain, right? So it is due to the secondary pollutant like nitric acid and sulfuric acid combinedly, they create a pH value of less than 5.6. Less than 5.6. So we refer them as acidic. Now don't get confused. So generally in the scales we have 0 to 14, and 7 is referred as neutral, and less than 7 is referred as acidic, more than 7 is referred as basic. Now that is ideal values, but there are, even if it is less than 7 also, we refer that as a normal. If you take tea, if you take blood, so we say they are having certain normal values, but still they are having not exactly 7. So in the same way, any water, any rainfall which is less than 5.6, then only we refer that as acidic rain. So you should be very careful in this. You should be very careful in that, right? So it is about 5.6 only. So they have said, because generally the rainfall which is occurs is always having certain amount of acidic one. It will always have certain amount of acidic, which may not be harmful. But if it is less than 5.6, then only it becomes harmful. Now the water what you are drinking, do you think that it is 100% free from any type of objects or any type of particles? The air what we breathe, do you think that it is 100% free from any type of particles? No, it will be having certain particles, but if the percentage of that particle increases, then they become dangerous. Is that clear? So here also the rain which we receive will be having certain amount of acidic, but it may not be harmful. But the value when it becomes 5.6 or less, then it becomes dangerous. Is it clear? This is something which is referred as the acid rain. You see, referred as acid rain. Is it clear? Yes, we inhale ground ozone. Many times we inhale that. Many times we inhale that, but the proportion is comparatively lesser. Many times we find. So in the summer season, you have inhaled that. Many times we have, but the proportion what we inhale is not that dangerous. If you inhale that in higher concentration, then that can be dangerous. So that's why it is an ideal values. Ideal values. Now this impact of acid rain is dangerous because this nitrogen and sulfur can be carried by winds. So it is more dangerous. It is more dangerous because these nitrogen and sulfur, they can be carried by wind. They can be carried by the wind from one place to another place. So that's why it can be in the areas where they don't have any industries also. Sometimes in the desert also we can find acid rain. Why? Because the winds will carry the pollutants to the great distance. Right, so they carried them to the great distance. So hence it is a dangerous event which is received even in the areas where the atmosphere or the air is not pollutant. Right. Now impact of acid rain. It will create corrosion to the metals. So that's why when we find the acid rains are there, the sometimes we find certain images which are being made by iron metals, etc. So we cover them, right? So they are dangerous. Sometimes they make an impact on the marbles, corrosion of the marbles. Take an example of Taj Mahal, right? So many idols are there which are made up of iron. So the moment when the acid rain is there, they make them to corrode. They make fading of textiles. It means that their color becomes dim. Colors become dim. We refer them as fading of textiles. Then it will have an impact on aquatic ecosystem. It means that many species are there, like fish, corals, etc. So they can't survive in the acidic water. They can't survive in acidic water. In acidic water, their productivity decreases or they are harmful in the context of that. Then agriculture. So the moment when the acid rain is there, it will damage the crops. Plus, it will reduce the fertility of the soil. It will reduce fertility of the soil. Fertility of the soil. To the human health, it will affect the skin, right? So allergies can be there. It can damage the eyes, etc. Right? So it can create irritation. So these are the harmful impact on the human health. These are the harmful impacts of the acid rain. Is it clear? So please remember this impact of the acid rain. So corrosion, fading of textiles, aquatic ecosystems, agriculture, and human health all are affected by that. Now next we move on to air pollution in the context of India. Now the moment when you talk about air pollution in India also we find the air pollution is there. In India we can have outdoor air pollution, and in India we are also having indoor air pollution. Both types of air pollutions are there. See, fading of textiles. Fading means their color diminishes. Color of the textile become dim. Or sometimes the textile will tear. It will tear off. We refer them as the fading of textiles. Right. Now, outdoor air pollution and indoor air pollutions. Now, in the context of India, now I'm talking about India. You should be very careful. We are talking about India. Now, in the context of India, the indoor air pollution is very predominantly seen. And this is very dominant in rural area. In rural area, it is very dominant. It is very dominant. in the context of India. Why? Because of the solid fuel which is used there. Solid fuel which is used there. Example of solid fuels are cow dung, wood, etc. Cow dung, wood, coal, etc. So even today we find a large amount of these are used there. Apart from that, in the context of rural India, we don't have proper ventilation. The windows are not there in the rural houses. So no proper ventilation. No proper ventilation. And this is true for urban area also. If you're working in any offices, so your office will be having AC, and the moment when it is having AC, do you find the windows are there? No. So it is true for urban also. It is true for urban also. Right. So we don't have proper ventilation. So when there is no proper ventilation, then the dust particles will accumulate in that areas. It will accumulate in that areas. Right. Apart from that, in the rural areas, we always use the traditional chulas. We always use traditional chulas. Traditional chula. Right. Now, when we use the traditional chulas, so traditional chulas will have less efficiency and they will always release more smokes. So these traditional chulas, they will be having less efficiency. They can't burn with high calorific value, and hence they release more smoke. They release more smoke. The design of the chulas are not that sufficient so that they can burn with high calorific values. Is it clear? And apart from that, in the context of India, lifestyles also create such. Lifestyles means many rural areas where we find the people keep on smoking tobacco. So that is surrounded in that areas. Right. So lifestyles like tobacco smoking. In the urban areas also we find smoking of cigarettes are there in the confined areas. So that all are responsible for the indoor pollutions in the context of India. Now, when we talk about the data, yes, electrical appliances, all you can put. So for that, I told no proper ventilations, right? So according to the data which was released in the year 2023, here it says that in the context of India, the indoor pollution is dominant by particulate matter 2.5, indoor air pollutant. So here we find particulate matter 2.5 is dominant. It is very high in the indoor air pollution. And this particulate matter 2.5 is mainly because of burning of the wood. Which is very, very predominant. Very high concentration of PM 2.5 is there. Apart from that, it also says that in the context of Indian indoor air pollution, volatile organic compound is also very high. The scents, the perfumes, the varnishes, so they are also very high. Volatile organic compounds are also very, very high. And it has said that India is number one in indoor air pollutant. It has said India is leading in indoor air pollutant. In indoor air pollution. Air pollution. This is about India's indoor air pollution. Now, in the context of outdoor air pollution, the major reason for India's outdoor pollution is what we refer them as vehicles, industries, stubble burning, forest fires. Then you can add natural factors like volcanic activity. But the major problem with India's is it is difficult to separate indoor and outdoor air pollutant. We find most of them overlap. So it is difficult. In the context of India, it is difficult to separate. to separate the indoor air pollution and outdoor air pollution, because many pollutants will overlap. Many pollutants are overlapping. Like PM 2.5 is from indoor also, it is seen in the outdoor also. So hence it is very difficult to differentiate the indoor air pollutants and outdoor air pollutants in India. It is very difficult. It is very difficult to separate the indoor and outdoor air pollutants in the context of India. Now, the last perspective here is, do we have any programs? Do we have any programs which the government has taken to reduce the impact of air pollution? Yes, stubble means the same. So when we talk about stubble means residues of the crop. Residue of the crops. Now, what are the programs which are taken by government in the context of reducing the air pollution in India? So sometimes they may be very important in the context of examination. So here it says, rather than tree plantation, you have to use the term afforestation. Afforestation. Then any programs I'm talking, any programs which I'm talking, programs like National Clean Air Program, National Clean Air Program, NCAP. I'll be discussing what is that. Then there is something called as, have you heard about Swachh Bharat Mission? Swachh Bharat Mission, which is also part of that. Then apart from that, we have something called as Amrit Mission. Amrit Mission. Then using of electric vehicles, which is that scheme where we use the electric vehicles, subsidies are given. Perfect. FAME, right? Then Ujjwala scheme. Perfect. Ujjwala scheme, etc. Right. So this is what you have to remember in the context. See, when we talk about afforestation, it is not about only PM 2.5. It is about the government steps which are taken to reduce the impact of the pollution. It is to controlling the pollution. It is not to make the dust particle to spread. So when you plant the trees, the dust particles are not scattered. It will act as a barrier to stop them. So such things you should be remembering that, right? So these all are very PM Kusum also you can add, so that the smokes are reduced there. So many are there. I'm just giving you the clue in which you have to write. So is it any difficulty to write any answers when they ask the question, write a note on India's air pollution and what are the major issues associated with India's air pollution? You have to remember outdoor air pollution, indoor air pollution, and then you have to talk about something which is associated with their characteristics. That is, it is very difficult to define them, right? Right. So please remember this. Yes. So AQI also you can add. Right. So many measures which are taken by government. I'm talking about government programs and schemes. Air quality index to monitor. That is to monitor. After monitoring, they take the programs. So AQI is an indicator. It is not a program. AQI is an indicator. It is not a program. So please remember these. Now next, we move on to understand certain factual data. So you don't make over study of that. Just remember the facts. In the context of India, we are having something called as Central Pollution Control Board. Now here, certain facts are very, very important. It was established, set up in the year 1974 under the Water Act of 1974. Then it was entrusted with the powers and functions. Powers and functions means it can impose fine and penalty. It can impose fine and penalties. Now, for example, if they say that the debris should not be thrown, if you are emitting a large amount of the dust particles, then they can impose fine. They can impose penalty or no. So it means that Central Pollution Control Board has power to impose fine and penalties, and this it receives through the Act of 1981. Through the Act of 1981, it can impose fine and penalties. Then it provides technical services to Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change under the Environment Protection Act of 1986. And it coordinates with the activities of the State Pollution Control Board. Every state government will have its own pollution board. It communicates with them. So CPCB is a central nodal agency in the context of pollution matter. It is central nodal agency, highest agency in the context of pollution and pollution materials. So please remember this. CPCB, it coordinates with the State Pollution Control Board. Right. Now, next is it talks apex means nodal agency. Apex means nodal agency. Now, here we come across ambient air quality. Now, what is ambient air quality? In a very simple term, the quality of outdoor air in the surrounding of environment which is having no pollutants, or without the pollutants. We refer that as ambient air quality. Ambient air quality, the quality of outdoor air or the natural air without pollutant. Right. So here ambient air means it is not referred as the most perfect one. Ambient means which is breathable air. Never confuse ambient with luxury. Luxury is different, ambient is different. It is breathable, which is not harmful. It is not the luxurious. It is breathable air. Is that clear? Now, when we talk about that, it is typically measured near the ground level, away from the direct source of pollutant. Now, the moment when we say ambient air quality, now, very simple, and you answer in this way. If you want to check the ambient air quality, will it have a fixed value or will it have a range? When you talk about the breathable air or without the pollutant, will it have a fixed value or will it have a range? Obviously, it will be having the range. So it will always calculated in the range. It means minimum and maximum. It is always calculated with the minimum and maximum. So this you should remember in the mind. So ambient air. So ambient air means it is the natural air in the surrounding, in the outside, without any pollutants. So it means that it is having particles, but the number is less. Do you agree with this? Ambient air means yes, it does have particles, but the particles proportion is very less, which is not harmful. That air we refer them as ambient air. Now, if the proportion of that increases maximum or if it is above the minimum, then it become a pollutant. In the ambient air, if the particles increases more than minimum values, then we say it is a dangerous, it becomes a harmful. Is it clear? So please remember these ambient part. Now, based on that, certain facts, as ambient air means minimum and maximum values are there, so it means you need to make monitoring. What is the present conditions in that location. So hence, in the year 1984, National Ambient Air Quality Monitoring was started. Check the maximum and minimum values. Then in the same year, it was renamed as National Air Monitoring Program. Next, monitoring was done in the initial stage. Monitoring was done for certain particles. They made an effort in that. So in the first, only 4 air pollutants were monitored. That is sulfur dioxide, nitrous oxide, suspended particulate matter, and RSPM. So only 4 were monitored in the beginning. They thought only these 4 are something which are creating health hazard. And in 1985, it was extended to 28 stations and then slowly to 26 states. And You have to remember that there was a change which was done in 1994. In the 1994, they introduced a standards. National ambient air quality standards were introduced, so that minimum and maximum values were given. So in between that minimum and maximum, they say it is feasible. So they introduced the standards, and these standards they introduced based on or taking the power from Air Act of 1981. So within the scope of this act, the air quality standards were introduced. Air quality standards were introduced. Is it clear? Now, these are the facts. Don't elaborate them. Now, initially, there were only four pollutants were there. Now, later they realized that apart from these four, there are few more which are dangerous. So, hence, in the year 2009, National Ambient Air Quality Standards were revised. Now, you should be careful in this. Instead of 4, 12 pollutants were introduced now. 12 pollutants were introduced now. Now, in the year 2009, they found that this suspended particulate matter is not dangerous. If you see the beginning one, so here we find suspended particulate matter was there. Later they find that suspended particulate matter is not dangerous. So hence they removed from the monitoring part, and they added those pollutants which are dangerous. They added those pollutants like PM2.5, etc., which are dangerous, and monitoring was done for these 12 pollutants, right? Then instead of the land use classification, they started using them like industrial area and residential area. The moment when you visit to the industrial area and residential area, in the industrial and residential, do you find the proportion of dust or smoke, will it be the same? They will differ. So hence the standards of industrial areas are different from standards of residential area. In the industrial area they will be higher side, in the residential area they will be lower side, and in the same way they are in the ecological sensitive areas as well. Apart from that, real time monitoring was started. If you are visiting railway stations, airports, on the digital board they will give the data. We refer that as real time monitoring by using many apps. Can you give any example of the app which is used for monitoring the pollutants or monitoring the air quality, which is very predominantly seen at present? Any app which is seen in monitoring of the air quality standards, right? So AQI is air quality index. I'm telling about the app. Sagarwani talks about the calculation of the earthquake waves, right? So here, have you heard about suffer? Right? So apps were used which calculate and put them into the data, right? Now these are the 12 pollutants. Now write them separately and read them carefully. In prelims they may ask, right? So these are the 12 air pollutants: sulfur dioxide, nitrogen dioxide, PM10, PM2.5, ozone, lead, carbon monoxide, ammonia, benzene. So here you don't have SPM, you don't have suspended particulate matter. So please read them. So these are the 12 pollutants which are monitored, and these are monitored in National Ambient Air Quality Standards. Please read them carefully. National Ambient Air Quality Standards, right? Now, when they calculate these data, so these data will be very complicated. Air pollution, their chemical composition, their characteristics are very, very complicated, right? So hence common man will not understand that. So hence what they did is they made all these complicated data and calculated them in numerical values. They converted all the complex data into numerical values so that the common person can also understand about the quality of the air. He can also understand about the quality of the air. And hence they introduced something called as ambient air quality index in the year 2014. The idea is to communicate about the quality of air even to the common people. And this is done when they calculate them into numerical values and color. So they are given numerical values and the color. It is something like this. They say something like this: if you want to rate something 0 to 10, 0 is the worst and 10 is the best. So the moment if somebody is ranking 1, it means that it is worst, and if somebody is telling 9, it means that it is best one. So this becomes easy for the normal people, common people, to understand the quality of the air. So hence everything was given in numerical values and everything was given with the color. And here you should remember, in the context of the air quality index, ambient air quality index, we talk about 8 pollutants which are measured. 8 pollutants which are measured. They are air quality index. There are 8 pollutants which are measured: PM10, PM2.5, nitrous oxide, ozone, carbon monoxide, sulfur dioxide, lead, ammonia, and lead. So please remember, in National Ambient Air Quality Standards, 12 pollutants. In Air Quality Index, 8 pollutants. Air Quality Index, 8 pollutants. RSPM means respiratory. So PM means the same. It is RSPM. RSPM or PM. Right. So both are there. I told you it is PM or RSPM. Both you can put. Right. So these are 8 pollutants which you have to take. And based on that, the numerical values and colors are there, which is a part of Swachh Bharat mission. One nation, one color. Right. So one nation, one color. One number, one color. Now here the quality of standards is, if it is 0 to 50, then it is good. It is referred as good, minimal impact. If it is 51 to 100, satisfactory, and it will be having light green color, and it is sensitive to that. If it is 100 to 200, then we say it is moderate, and it is shown by yellow color. Breathing discomfort, etc. So when the air quality standards reaches to 100 to 150 or 180, then they will make this, they will give this. So they will make alerts in that parameters. If it is 201 to 300, then we refer that as poor. It is represented by orange color. If it is 401 to 500, severe. Dark red colors are there. So most of the time in Delhi, in the winter season, we find it crosses 500. It breaches 500. It is more than 500. And even then we refer that as dark red color. Is that clear? So please remember these. Now don't make in-depth analysis why 24 hours or why 8 hours. They will never ask you why they are. They will never ask you about that. So it is just to understand this. Don't make in-depth analysis of that. So they are monitored because every time within that they keep on changing. Is that clear? Right. So this is what you have to remember. Sometimes it may be 200, sometimes it may be 300, but all the time we find these datas are seen. One number, one color, and one description. Is it clear? Okay. Now next is suffer. Factual data. Don't make much elaboration. It is a system of air quality, weather, and forecasting research. It is India's first air quality checking model, and it is developed by IITM, Indian Institute of Tropical Meteorology, which is in Pune. Plus it is Ministry of Earth Science. Right. Combinedly, they have created the suffer, and it always provide real-time monitoring. Real-time monitoring is done. Now here you should remember, here it monitors different pollutants. It monitors different pollutants, right? So it monitors PM 2.5, PM 10, ozone, carbon monoxide, nitrogen oxide, sulfur dioxide, benzene, toluene, and these. So here the pollutants are different. So you should be very careful. National ambient air quality standards, they are different. Air quality index, they are different. And suffer, they are different. Some may be overlapping. We may find certain which are overlapping. Some are overlapping, but many are there which are not included in that. So please keep this in the mind. Right. Now next, National Clean Air Program. Now this National Clean Air Program, it was introduced in the year 2019. Now this is city specific. It is city specific. It means it is associated with urban areas, because urban areas are the one which are more affected by the climate change, and the urban areas also contribute for the country's GDP. Urban areas are the one which contribute more GDP, and these are the one which are also most affected. Right? So hence a collaborative and participatory approach is done. It means collaboration of center, state, local people. Stakeholder means local people. So it is a collaborative, integrated approach of central government, state government, local authorities, plus the local people. Right? So it is collaborative and participatory approach. And in the beginning, it was applied in 131 non-attained cities. Non-attained cities, right? So generally we refer them as NAC. So what do you mean by non-attained cities? So non-attained cities are those cities which have not met the national ambient air quality standards. So these are the cities which have not met the national ambient air quality standards. Which have not met the national ambient air quality standards, we refer them as non-attained cities, right? And this program, major objective is to reduce particulate matter 2.5 and particulate matter 10, as they were seen into high proportion. Idea was to reduce PM10 and PM10 20 to 30% of 2017 level by 2024. So this is its aim. Initially, when it started, it was having the aim to reduce 20 to 30% of PM 2.5 and PM10 of 2017 by 2024. So it means that this program was from 2019 to 2024. It was from 2009 to 2024. Later, this program was extended. Extended with new targets. It was extended with new targets. So what new targets were given? So new targets were, as they were able to achieve that, so they fixed the new targets. Now they say that 40% of reduction in PM 2.5 and PM 10 by 2026. So the new target is 40% of reduction of both PM 2.5 and PM 10.5. PM 10 by 2026. So that is the new target, right? Then this is city specific actions which are taken, right? So this is updated one. So now the program will run till 2026, right? Now to make a stronger impact on that, they created something called as a portal called as Prana. Prana portal. So what Prana stands for? Portal for regulation of air pollution in the non-attainment cities. Now it is to assess or to evaluate the financial and its physical growth. So it is to tackle its physical as well as financial status. What amount of money is there? What amount of financial status are there? What amount of its growth is seen? Up to what targets it has reached? To assess that, they created a prana, a portal, right? Now, the data was surveyed, and in the year 2023, they made a shocking, alarming aspect. They found that this national clean air program, which was working very well, now slowly it is started to develop certain problems, which they highlighted in the month of December of 2023. Now, what are the major problems associated with this program? Major problems associated with this. So generally, this community based programs, it is about the people's coordination or people's involvement. So it is mainly due to ineffective efficient policy. Ineffective efficient policy. So when we talk about ineffective efficient policies are there, it will not motivate. So this leads to lack of motivation of the people towards the program. Without that, they can't be involving. Second one is, when we talk about that, awareness was not created. People were not made a part of that, right? So lack of awareness. So there was no motivation for the people who are working, and lack of awareness was there. The third one is no proper coordination. Where? Between the Central Pollution Control Board and State Pollution Control Board. No proper coordination between Central Pollution Control Board and State Pollution Control Board. No proper coordination between the Central Pollution Control Board and State Pollution. So hence, this program was losing its charm. So UPSC may ask a question on that. Write a note on National Clean Air Program and what are the major problems associated with the NCAP. So this is some rough idea about National Clean Air Program. Right. Now, the data which is given by the IQAR. Right. So it is referred as World Air Quality Report. So it uses PM 2.5 as a parameter to identify, right? And it is micrograms per cubic meter. According to that, the fact says that Aizawl, which is capital city of Mizoram, has the cleanest air in India. And here the PM 2.5 is less than, or it's almost all very negligible, 11 micrograms per cubic meter. The city with worst air pollution is Lahore in Pakistan, followed by the Hotan in China. Delhi is the fourth most populated city in the world. Then country-wise, Chad, Iraq, Pakistan, Bahrain, Bangladesh. So these are the most 5 polluted countries in the year 2022. And the position of India is 8th. India is 8th most polluted country in the world. Now, it has also highlighted that in the context of India, the transport industry is responsible for 20 to 35% of particulate matter 2.5 in the country. So transport sector is adding more amount of PM 2.5. After transport, construction activities, which are adding more amount of particulate matter 2.5. Is that clear? Now, if you take the perspective of air pollution, this air pollution will have a huge impact on the GDPs. of the particular states. GDP of the particular states. For example, to provide the treatment, to create the infrastructure, to compensate for the losses there. So the every state government will have their budgetary allocation for that. Now every year we find large amount of the GDP is lost. If you take the Delhi, so around 6% of its GDP is lost to control the air pollution issue. If you take Mumbai, it is around 4 to 5%. So all the important cities, they will be having major issues. Now, if you take the data which was given in the year 2020, if you take Lucknow, 6,700 deaths were there per year, and 1.1 billion losses will be there to the state government. If you take Hyderabad, 1.6 billion, and deaths are more. If you take Mumbai, we find the same conditions. But if you take Delhi, then the data are very, very alarming. We find that the deaths are very high, and it also leads to large amount of the losses. Now the question starts is why the Delhi pollution is so dangerous? Why Delhi pollution is so dangerous? Right. So this is one part. Second one is this Delhi pollution is always seen during the winter season. It is always seen during the winter season. During the winter season. Now, why it is most polluted during the winter season? So this is what you have to understand. Now, if you see the data which are given, Delhi has become worse than the Narak. Then it also says that the life expectancy has reduced to 9.4. It means that a person who is staying in Delhi, he will die 9 years before his life expectancy. Right. So it means that his life will be reduced by 9 years. And this Delhi air pollution is always predominantly seen in the winter condition. Every year, every year, it is dominant in the winter condition. Is it clear? Now you can have a break, then we'll continue this exactly at 7 p.m. We'll continue at 7 p.m. Right. So after the break, we will discuss what are the major causes and what are the probable solution for Delhi air pollution. Okay, welcome back after a break. So hope I'm audible as well as visible to you all. Right. So we were discussing about Delhi air pollution. Now, what are the reasons for Delhi air pollutions? Reasons for Delhi air pollution. The first one is vehicles, which are responsible for creating 20 to 30% of particulate matter, 2.5. So many vehicles are there as it is a national capital, right? Then industries. So many industries are there, fertilizer industries, glass industries, etc. So these industries, they will emit large amount of the gases or the particles which combine and create the pollutant, emit large amount of gases and particles. Industries like rubber industries, textile industries, fertilizer industries, etc. So many are there which releases. So here we also find power plants are there, and oil refineries are there, oil refineries and power plants. And these power plants are the one which runs on maybe coal or natural gas, which run on the coal and natural gas, which releases carbon and carbon products, right? Then construction activities, as it is a national capital, so large amount of construction activities are there, and these construction activities also emit the particulate matter 2.5, which is predominantly seen here. Vehicles, industries, power plants, refineries. Apart from that, stubble burning is also seen. Stubble burning means the burning of residue of crop, burning the residue of crop after the harvest, after the harvest, right? Now the stubble burning is seen in the neighboring states like Punjab and Haryana, and the winds carry them towards national capital territory or Delhi. Now why this issue is seen? Generally in Punjab and Haryana, in these two states, Punjab and Haryana, they sow rice as their kharif crops. So they grow rice as their kharif crop, and this they do by doing irrigation plus monsoon, southwest monsoon, southwest monsoon. After harvesting the rice, when they cut, we refer that as harvesting. After harvesting the rice, then they grow the rabi crop, which is their main crop, and this rabi crop is the wheat crop, which is referred as winter crop. Now why they do the stubble burning? The stubble burning is seen in Punjab and Haryana because there is very less time. They find there is very less time between harvesting of rice and sowing of wheat. Very limited time is there. So hence, as there is a limited time, 1 days, 2 days, etc. So it is not feasible for them to clear the stubble. So hence they go for burning. Of the stubble. Hence they burn the residue. And this burning is done by both farmers, big farmers as well as small farmers. Both big farmers and small farmers. They burn that. And apart from that, the residues which are left out, the residues of the rice, the residue of the rice is generally hard. It is hard, and they can't use it for pastures. They can't use as pasture. Pasture means food for the cattle, because it is having more silica. This consists of more silica, right? So they can't use that as a fodder for their cattle. They can't use that fodder for their buffaloes, right? So hence it is not basically important for them to keep them as a fodder. The reason is its composition. So hence the fastest and the alternate way is to burn the residues. So that's why it is seen in the context of Punjab and Haryana, where the stubble burning is seen. Now, stubble burning is not itself a major problem. Stubble burning is seen in Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, Maharashtra. In all the states, we find the stubble burning are there. But the timing of the stubble burning in Delhi makes it problem. The timing of the stubble burning is something which makes a problem. Because this stubble burning is done during winter season, where it is carried and reaches to the local areas, that is more specifically to the Punjab and Haryana, which is during the winter season, which makes the polluted winds or the pollutants to reach towards the Delhi. So this is some rough idea about the stubble burning. The timing is something which is cause of a concern. And also less time between their harvesting and the sowing is one of the major things. So this is what you have to remember in the context of stubble burning, right? Now next is topography and location. Now if you take Delhi's location and topography, this Delhi is located in the transition area. It is located in the transition area. It is not a destination, it is transition area. If you take the other cities, Mumbai is located in the destination area, Kolkata is in the destination area, but Delhi is in between. It is in the transition where the vehicle keep on moving. It is in the transition where the vehicles keep on moving. Vehicles, they keep moving from here, from Punjab towards Kargil and Jammu Kashmir, from Haryana towards J&K. So it is an area where continuous movement of vehicles are there. Location part, that is one. Second aspect is, if you see the area in the northern side of Delhi, it is having a mountain. In the north of Delhi, we are having a mountain. Himalayas are there, right? So in the north, Himalayan mountains are there. And these Himalayas, they act as a barrier. They act as a barrier, which will not allow the wind to cross the other side, which will act as a barrier for the winds, which will not allow the pollutants to cross the barrier and reach to that areas. So hence it is a physical barrier which is seen. Apart from that, it is somewhat does not have coastal access. If you see Delhi, Delhi does not have any coastal access. It is landlocked. It means no coastal access. So if you take Mumbai, if you take Kolkata, they are having coastal areas. So in the coastal areas, the winds will be of high velocities. The winds from land to the sea or sea to the land, they will be having high velocities. So in the coastal areas, if you see, in the coastal areas, the winds will be stronger. And these winds can carry the pollutants outside. Can carry the pollutants outside. But this is not in the context of Delhi, where we find it is somewhat which acts as a landlocked perspectives, right? Then, apart from that, it also talks about something called as the conditions in the Delhi because of its location. So generally, when we talk about the winter condition or the winter season, so what happens in the winter season? The winds changes their direction from southwest to northeast. So here we find the winds changes their direction. Winds change their direction from southwest to northeast. And hence the winds will be weak. So hence the winds will be weak and they can't carry the pollutant outside. And apart from that, due to change in the direction of the wind, the dust will accumulate at Delhi. The pollutants will accumulate at Delhi. At Delhi. So this is because of its topography and its location, where it is inevitable in the context of the pollution. Every year it is the same thing. Apart from that, it is also having a major problem with municipal solid waste. Now in the solid waste, when we take the solid waste in the present scenarios, we segregate the solid waste. We segregate the solid waste, right? After segregating, there are certain waste which can be recycled. And there are some which are non-recycled. So these waste which cannot be recycled, so generally we burn them at high temperature. And by that we generate certain activities from that which can be used for energy development. So hence we introduced a concept called as waste to energy in this. So by burning them, it was used to generate the electricity. So hence it is referred as waste to energy concept. And the example of that is the Okla plant, which was in the neighboring proximity of Delhi. But when they start burning there, it emitted large amount of the pollutants and the gases. So when the burning was done with high temperature, so it emitted large amount of gases, the pollutants, which were referred as carcinogenic. Now, what do you mean by carcinogenic? Can anybody give an idea? What is this carcinogenic? Which types of pollutants we refer them as carcinogenic? Perfect. Which can cause cancer. So hence it created major problem in that. So that also was not a good indication in the Delhi perspectives. Then other factors. So when you talk about other factors are generally in the winter season. We always find that festivals are celebrated like Deepavali, where we use large amount of crackers. And these crackers are something which can add large amount of the pollutants. So these are referred as the probable reason for Delhi's air pollution. Out of this, 4 or 5 may be there, or out of that many will be there. And generally these pollutants, they combine with the fog and they create the smog. So these pollutants, they combine with the fog and then they create a smog, which makes a major dangerous condition in the context of Delhi, right? Now we'll try to understand what are the probable solution for the same. What are the solutions for the same? Probable solutions. I'm using the term probable. It may not be the exact solution. Probable solutions are there. The first one is decomposer capsule. They are also referred as pusa capsule, and they are made up of fungi. So these capsules, they are mixed with the water. They are mixed with the water. Yes, biodecomposer. They are mixed with the water, and a solution is created by them. And this solution is sprayed on the crop residues. It is sprayed on the residues, so that these residues will become soft and decompose. But the major problem was it takes 20 to 25 days. Major problem is that it takes 20 to 25 days. Now the farmers do not have that much of time here. So hence it may not be very feasible solution. Right. Then anti-smog towers. So these anti-smog towers, they were set up because of the experimental which was seen in the context of the China. So hence, according to direction of Supreme Court, anti-smog towers or anti-smog guns were fixed in Delhi. Now these anti-smog towers, they are more controversial because of their cost and effective. Because of their cost and effectiveness. So average cost of that is around 20 crore rupees. Average cost is around 20 crore rupees. Right. But how these anti-smog towers work? These anti-smog towers, so they take up the polluted air inside, and then there are thousands of layers. So they are having thousands of layers which are referred as filters, which filters the air pollutants, particulate matter 10, particulate matter 2.5. After that, they release clean air from downwards through this area. That is 25 cubic meters of air per second it is releasing. So you don't have to write all these technical aspects. Just remember, anti-smog towers and anti-smog guns were used. It consists of thousands of layers of filters, and the polluted air enters there. It's sucked there by the fan. The fan sucked the polluted air, and then through the filters it absorbed the pollutants, and then a clean air passed from that. Now again they are making study of this. They are making study of that, whether they are feasible or not. So many reports which were given, even in the year 2023 or 24, that they say that they are costly and they are not much effective in the context of India. They are not much effective in the context of India. Only 2 points you have to write. Right. Next, hydrogen-based fuel technology. Now, the moment when we say hydrogen-based fuel technology, you don't have to write in detail about that. So in the context of hydrogen-based fuel technology, it always gives zero emission fuel. Zero emission fuel. Because whenever when we use this technology, the end products or byproducts of that, the byproducts of that will be water. Which may not be harmful. Then next is Delhi electric vehicle policy of 2020. Now this Delhi electric vehicle policy, yes, H2O, Delhi electric vehicle policy. So this is where they made the vehicles which were purchased, electric vehicles, they were exempted from road taxes. Electric vehicles, exemption was given. Exemption from road tax. So when the exemption was given from them, so they become cheaper. They become cheaper. And also subsidies were given. Subsidies were given so that they can promote the electric vehicles. So in the context of hydrogen based fuel, so certain hydrogen based fuels were used. It's a new technology which we've seen. So when we use in the context of pollution, you don't have to explain in detail about how this hydrogen fuel is formed. You have to just use the term. If you are writing anything in your SNT, then you have to write something on hydrogen fuel. So here you have to just answer that hydrogen based fuel technology where the end product is water. So that's what sufficient. Don't elaborate all these. So this becomes your SNT. Don't write that. So here just the statement is important. So if it is important or if it is needed, then I would have explained that in detail. Is it clear? So Delhi electric vehicle policy, which makes them cheaper. Now the fifth point, which is very important, is the graded response action plan. Now this graded response action plan was approved by Supreme Court. Approved by Supreme Court in the year 2016. And this graded response action plan is also referred as emergency plan. Emergency plan. And this graded response action plan is a 4-stage plan. 4-stage plan. Right. Now, this graded response action plan is applied or it is executed. Applied or executed based on the concentration of the air, taking the component of PM 2.5 and PM 10, particulate matter 2.5 and particulate matter 10. So the concentration of particulate matter 2.5 and particulate matter 10 was taken in the context of graded response action plan. So here their values are taken into consideration. If the values of PM 2.5 and PM 10, it reaches to certain defined parameters, then that stage was applied. So remember, the graded response action plan was executed or it was applied only when these particulate matter PM 2.5 and PM 10 reached certain values. This plan was not implemented in the beginning stage. It cannot be implemented in advance. It is implemented only when the state of air reaches to certain values. And remember, it consists of only 2 parameters, PM 2.5 and PM 10. Now understand the values and their parameters. In the stage 1, if the PM 2.5 is above 61 micrograms per meter cube, or PM 10 above 100 microgram per meter cube, then we refer that as moderate to poor air quality, and these activities are performed: mechanized sweeping, washing roads, enforcing ban on firecrackers, increased scrutiny of vehicles. So this is stage 1. Now in the stage 2, if PM 2.5 is above 121 or PM 10 above 351, then stage 2 is applied. Stage 2 is applied. And here, the moment when you say stage 2, ban on diesel generators, parking fee increases. Surge means increases to 3 or 4 times. So instead of 10 rupees, 40 rupees, so that discourage private vehicles unless and until it is necessary. Then stop the coal and firewood eateries. Right. So these are the stage 2. Now stage 3 is when the conditions of PM 2.5 and PM 10 are more than 2.5 and 430. Then stage 3 is applied. Here, increasing the frequency of road cleaning, shutting down the brick kilns, and restricting the vehicles which are operating, restricting the coal-based thermal power generations. That is stage 3. And most of the time when it becomes more dangerous, then we refer that as stage 4. And in the stage 4, the PM 2.5 is more than 300 and PM 10 is more than 500. And here, ban on entry of the trucks unless and until it is essential. Halt construction activities. Then begin with odd and even entry here. So this is something which is important in the context of the graded response action plan. Emergency plan which was introduced. Emergency plan which was introduced as a impact to the pollution. Now, later they found that it may not be that effective if we use it only when the conditions are reached. So hence they amended this. They made some changes in that. They says that along with PM 2.5 and PM 10, there are other pollutants also. Why you are taking only PM 2.5 and PM 10 into consideration? You have to link that with the air quality index. Then it becomes a very scientific to be calculated. And if you know that the conditions are worsening, why don't you apply in the initial stage? Why don't you apply that graded response action before the event has occurred here? So hence they made a change and they revamped the graded response action in the August 2022. And here when we talk about the graded response action plan, it is proactive and preemptive. It means that it is implemented in advance. It is implemented in advance. They don't have to wait for the condition. In advance, before 3 days, before 10 days, they can implement so that they will not face to the worst condition. So we refer them as preemptive, implemented beginning only. Then here, instead of PM 2.5 and PM 10, both were kept out. So they used AQI. So please remember this. The revised or revamped graded response action plan is applied on the basis of air quality index. Air quality index, not on the basis of PM 2.5 or PM 10. So this is the old one. Now they don't use PM 2.5 or PM 10. They use air quality index, AQI, to implement the graded response action plan. And here in the stage 1, if it is 201 to 300, the stages are same. Stage 1, 200 to 300. Then stage 2, when the air quality index becomes 301 to 400. 301 to 400, the stages will be same, the activities will be same, but instead of PM 2.5 and PM 10, they are using air quality index. So that is the major difference. So one is they can be applied in advance. Second one is PM 2.5 and PM 10 are replaced by air quality index. So if you remember this, that is more sufficient. Stages are same, activities are same, but the change is AQI. Is that clear? And apart from that, ban on construction activities are done under severe categories. So what is severe categories? This is severe categories. AQI 401 to 450. So these are the facts which you should remember. Is that clear? Then ban on industries running on dirty fuels, fossil fuels, which can be creating major impact. Fossil fuels on construction and demolition activities in the linear public projects. So linear means roadways, highways, etc. Right, etc. At stage 4. Right. So ban on industries running on dirty fuel and construction and demolition activities in linear projects only when it reaches to stage 4. Stage 4 is this. Stage 4. Right. Then restriction on four-wheeler vehicles which have certain Bharat stage. BS means Bharat stage. It is eco label for emission, label which is gone for emission. So only certain vehicles are allowed, right? Then reducing working staff, work from home is given so that they should not make congested. Work from home is allowed during severe plus. Severe plus means the fourth one. Fourth one, right? So these are the activities. These are the activities which are to be done as a probable solution for Delhi's air pollution, right? Then co-firing, or it is also referred as something called as combination of coal and biomass. Now this is when they made a study, that is Central Electric Authority and the Japan's technology. They found that if you burn, or if we burn coal plus the biomass, that is stubble. Biomass, here it is stubble. Stubble. If you burn the coal along with biomass, either in the same chamber or in a different chamber, same chamber or different chamber, in the different chamber or in the same chamber, combinedly, we refer that as co-firing. We refer that as co-firing, combining burning of biomass and the coal. We refer that as coal or co-firing. Now, what happens when the co-firing is done? What happens when the co-firing is done? Whenever co-firing is done, it will reduce 73% of particulate matter, 47% of carbon dioxide, 5% of nitrous oxide, 98% of SO2, 99% of carbon monoxide. So it will control the pollution. So these amount of pollutants will be reduced here. So hence they found that this is one of the feasible solution in the context of the Delhi air pollution. Apart from that, apart from reducing the pollutant, it will also create revenue to the farmers. It will also create revenue to the farmers. Plus, it will also create employment opportunities. It will also create employment opportunities. Now, how this employment opportunities and revenues are there? Now, generally in the co-firing, they always need the residues, the stubbles. They purchase the stubbles. They purchase the stubbles at the rates which are fixed for mustard husk, for paddy, for wheat and all. So this will generate revenue to the farmers. This will generate revenue to the farmers. Now, after that, whatever collection and transportation is there, so that will create employment. That will create employment in the rural areas. In the rural areas. Right. So hence they found that this is comparatively feasible, and hence in the context of India, the policy is also being created in the year 2024 and 25, where they say that the thermal power stations will be using 5% of co-firing. Thermal power stations where they generate the electricities, so they will be using 5% of co-firing. Co-firing. Right. So this is your current affairs as well. Probable solution in the context of Delhi. Right. Then apart from this, apart from that, any other solution you can say apart from co-firing? Any other part? As a geography student, any other solution can you highlight apart from this? Right. So you can say that instead of the traditional crops, crop diversification. Probable solution will be crop diversification. That is, instead of rice, you can grow pulses, oil seeds and millets. Pulse, oil seed, millets, etc. So such types are there. plus sometimes more controversial is, and many students write that it is agreed but it is more controversial, agreed but more controversial. We refer that as artificial rain, which is created by that. So what is the name given to that? Artificial rain, which is controversial. Artificial rain which is created, artificial rain which is created by some technology. Silver iodide is used in that. We refer that as cloud seeding. But this is also controversial. This is also controversial. But yet they say these are the probable solution in the context of Delhi pollution. Right? Yes, ethanol is also there, but I'm talking about the co-firing parameters. You can use them in many sectors. Now, next we move on to water pollution. Yes, public transport should be prompted. You can add that also. You can add that public transport should be rated. And that's what National Action Plan for Climate Change, mass rapid transit systems. So you can link them with your answer. So here it is about linkages. Here it is about linkages, mass transport. The same you can mention. So these are referred as probable solution. Right. Now we move on to water pollution. We move on to water pollution. Now, when we talk about water pollution, generally we say it is contamination of water or water contamination. And the definition remains the same. That is undesirable change in the physical, chemical, and biological characteristic of water, which become a health hazard or which can harm the living organisms. We refer them as water pollutants. So water pollution can be of two types. They are referred as point source and non-point source. So what is point source? The moment when we say point source, the discharge is from single point. It is discharge from single point. Single point. So when the point source is there, it is easy to identify. Easy to identify. Right. And it is also easy for treatment. Easy for treatment. Right. Then second one is when the water pollution reaches through multiple sources. When the water reaches or discharge from multiple sources or multiple points. Discharge from multiple points. Multiple points. We refer that as the non-point sources. Now, hence, it is very difficult to identify. Difficult to identify and difficult to make treatment. So it can be from industries, it can be from households, it can be from any cities, rural areas, agricultural tracts, or forest areas. So it can be from multiple points. Hence, it is very difficult to identify and difficult to make a treatment of that. Right. Now, all the water pollutions, we can classify them into three categories. Three categories of water pollutions are there. They are the surface water pollution. Surface means lakes, rivers, etc. Then the second type of water pollution is which is seen in the oceans. We refer that as marine pollutions. Marine pollutions. Then the pollution inside the earth, we refer that as groundwater pollution. Groundwater pollution. So three types of water pollutions are there. Groundwater pollution. Now, generally in the groundwater pollution, it can be through the agricultural fields where the water seepages downward. So in both or any way, the water seepages downwards along with the pollutants. Or it can be through the septic tanks, leakage from the septic tanks. Leakage from these septic tanks. right? Or sometimes during mining activities, it is reaching. Or sometimes a seepage through the while digging the oil pumps and gas paths, or sometimes through the landfills. Landfills means unsegregated solid waste when you throw outside. It is unsegregated solid waste when you throw outside. So the decomposition of the organic waste takes place, and that liquid percolates downward. That liquid percolate downward. We refer that as the waste from the landfills. So three categories are there: surface, marine, and groundwater pollution. Groundwater pollution, right? Now, what are the causes of water pollution? This is very simple. They may not ask, but still you should remember. Oil spill and accidents. Oil spills, generally, it can be because of leakage or because of errors. Like the oil spill was done, which is in Russia, because of leakage of the reservoir where they stored. Or in Turkey, sometimes it can be accidents. Sometimes it can be accidents, and this was seen last year when big ship struck with an accident when it was about to reach to the Sri Lanka. Accidents. So in all the cases we find large amount of spilling of oil is done. It can be petroleum, it can be diesel, or it can be any type of oil sludge. Any type of oil sludge, we refer that as oil spills, right? Error means sometimes human errors can be seen when they are carrying the leakage, when they are carrying the oils, or when they are carrying them through the ships. Due to their technical errors, they may break, and they can also become, right? So generally we refer them as human errors in that. Or maybe where they are storing, the machinery may not be strong in that regions. Next, sewage and wastewater. So this sewage and wastewater, when it is added to the rivers or the lakes without treatment, we refer that as sewage and wastewater. Then mining activities. So whenever mining activities are there, where you wash the ores and certain chemicals are used there, which percolate downward. Then agriculture. So in the agriculture, we use fertilizers, we use pesticides. During the rainy season, or sometimes whenever irrigation is done in the traditional way, they are carried away by the water and reaches to the ponds and lakes, or they percolate downward. Next is marine dumping. In many countries or coastal countries, when we say, they carry the solid waste, they carry the solid waste along with their vessels up to 8 kilometers or 10 kilometers inside the ocean, and then they dump them. So we refer that as marine dumping. So from the coastal area up to 8 kilometers, they reach to the ocean area and they dump, which can create marine pollution. Then leakage from the landfills. So these are the landfills. Unsegregated solid waste, when it is dumped, so slowly it will decompose and the liquid flows downward. Leakages from the landfills. Then acid rain, which can be more dangerous in the context of all the pollutions. So these are referred as the causes of the water pollution. Now, the next term which is very important is eutrophication. Now, please focus and understand this. Eutrophication. What is eutrophication, and what are the terms associated with eutrophication? Now, the moment when you talk about eutrophication, understand that if this is a lake, you may find agricultural activities there. You may find industry in that area, right? You may find residential in that areas, right? So agriculture areas will be there, residential areas will be there, industries will also be there. Now in these areas, when we talk about agriculture and all, so when we use the fertilizers like nitrogen, phosphorus, etc., in agriculture we use the fertilizers like NPK, nitrogen, potassium, etc. So after the rainy season, so these NPK will reach to that, lake or water body. Residential areas, whenever the pollutants are discharged from that, so along with many pollutants, it will also bring nitrogen, phosphorus to the water body. Industry, it will also release large pollutants to that, and in that pollutants it may also have nitrogen, phosphorus, etc. So when they add nitrogen, potassium, phosphorus, etc., to the water body along with other pollutants, so this water body will become rich with the nutrients. So remember this. So this water body, it will become rich with the nutrients. Rich with the nutrients. Right, along with the pollutants, it becomes rich in the nutrients, and we refer that as enriched water body. And this process, when the lake, river, pond, when it becomes rich with the nutrients or enrichment with the nutrients, we refer this as eutrophication. We call this as eutrophication. Eutrophication. Eutrophic means a lake which is full with the nutrients. A lake which is full with the nutrients, we refer them as eutrophication. Right. Now, next, understand. Whenever eutrophication is there, it means it is rich with the nutrients. It is something like this. A baby is there. You are giving a Horlicks boost in particular interval. Now from morning to evening, every hour you are giving him boost and Horlicks in high proportion. What will happen to the growth of baby? You are supplying him heavy doses of the boost, heavy doses of the Horlicks, heavy doses of proteins to that. What will happen to that baby? The baby will have uncontrolled growth. Abnormal growth or uncontrolled. Is that clear? Now, in the same way, when the lake is rich with the nutrients, what will happen? Uncontrolled growth of algae will be there. So this lake, which is eutrophic, so this eutrophic lake will have uncontrolled growth of algae. The green algae, they grow enormous. So uncontrolled growth of algae will be there. The green plants which grow, uncontrolled growth of algae will be here. See this. And this uncontrolled growth of algae is referred as algal bloom. We refer this as algal bloom. Algal bloom. Right. So eutrophic lake will create algal bloom. Up to this, is it clear? Eutrophic lake will create algal bloom. Now what happens? What happens when the lake has become algal bloom? What happens in that? Now the first thing is, when it has created or completely covered the surface, it will does two things. It will not allow the oxygen to enter into the water body. So it will not allow oxygen to enter. That is atmospheric oxygen to enter. It will not allow the O2 to enter into that. That is one. Second thing is, it will act like a cover where it will not allow the sunlight to penetrate. So it will block the sunlight. Right. Then third thing is, Third thing is, when it has blocked the sunlight, sunlight will not go inside. And when the sunlight is reduced in the shallow waters, sufficient sunlight will not reach to the phytoplanktons there. Sufficient sunlight will not reach to the small algae or small plants there. Now, when the sunlight is not reaching to that, what will happen to the photosynthesis? Will it increase or decrease there? What will happen to the photosynthesis when the block of sunlight is there, right? So I'm not talking about bottom man, I'm talking about the coastal areas. So here we find the coastal vegetations will be there, right? So when there is a large amount of the blockage of sunlight, the algae, the other vegetations which are there in the shallow waters, I'm using the term, please catch the words, I'm using the term shallow vegetation, not the deep vegetation. So the moment when we talk about blocking of the sunlights, then the photosynthesis will decrease. Decreases. Now in all these cases, so when there is block of oxygen, when there is block of sunlight, so that water will have decrease of oxygen concentration. So this water, this lake or this pond or this water will show decreasing of oxygen concentration. So the concentration of oxygen decreases in that area. Is it clear? So this is the first aspect. The concentration of oxygen decreases in that areas. Up to this, is it clear? So in that eutrophic lake, after the algal bloom, the concentration of oxygen decreases. Right. Now, what happens? Along with this? In these lakes, the algae, they will also die. Certain organisms, they will also die. They are not that they are immortal, they will die. So in these water bodies, maybe in 100 years, 50 years, so we find the algae will die, the organisms will die. So when they die, they will create organic solution or organic matter. So when they die, they will create organic pollutant. So the dead algae and organisms, like fish and small species which they die, we refer them as organic. Now these organic wastes which are there in the ocean or in the lake or in the water bodies, bacteria will be there. So the bacteria will act on the organic waste and then they will decompose them. Now these bacteria will act on the organisms in the presence of oxygen or in the absence of oxygen. In the presence, yes, fish will also die. In the presence of oxygen or in the absence of oxygen. It is a type of aerobic type. So these bacteria, they take up oxygen. In the presence of oxygen, they need oxygen very strong. See, if a rat dies, an example, if a rat dies in your refrigerator, and if a rat dies, say in the ground areas or outside the room, in one area where there is completely absence of oxygen, where the temperature is less, and in one areas where we find the air is also there and oxygen is also sufficient. So where do you find the decomposition of rat is predominant? In the refrigerator or outside the refrigerator? Why outside? Understand this. This is very important. Why outside? It is because it is having abundant bacteria which can act on that. Second, it is having abundant oxygen. Both are important. Abundant oxygen, abundant bacteria. Now, why bacteria are active? Because of high temperature. More the temperature, more bacteria. Now, what the food when you keep in the refrigerator, it will not damage. Why? Because of low temperature, low bacteria. In the refrigerator, the food will not damage. Why? Because low temperature, low bacteria. So that's why if a rat dies in the refrigerator, the low temperature, no bacteria, which will not decompose that. So please remember this. For decomposition of organic, you need to have bacteria, and second thing is oxygen. Both are required. In the presence of oxygen, the bacteria decomposes then. Decomposes then, right? I don't know in what language I have to explain. I told you that in the refrigerator, because of low temperature, the bacteria will not be active. So that is how the refrigerators work. That is how the refrigerators work. So generally, if you take the food and keep outside in the summer season, because of temperature, the bacteria will be dominant. Have you heard about pedology, soil formation? So in that, the role of temperature is seen on the bacteria. Higher the bacteria, higher the bacteria, higher the temperature, higher the bacteria, more amount of decomposition is there. Simple logic, right? So don't get much involved in that. Pavitra, just remember. Pavitra, just remember that if the temperature is more bacteria, then they will eat more of organic part. Less temperature, less bacteria. So they will not eat the organic part. Keep this in the mind. Right. So temperature also plays an important role. Right. So here I'm talking about the relationship between bacteria and oxygen. Both are required. Both are required. So in the presence of bacteria and oxygen, it will decompose that. It will decompose that. Is it clear? Now the last part of that, because of these two activities, now which two activities I'm talking? One is due to algal bloom. And second one is due to decomposition. Due to decomposition of the dead organic part. What will happen to the oxygen level in the water? What will happen to the oxygen level in the water? Already it is decreasing. And whatever left out oxygen is there, it is also used by bacteria to convert that into the decomposition. So such water bodies, due to algal bloom and due to the action of the bacteria, so this water will have severe shortage of oxygen. And whenever there is a severe shortage of oxygen is there, we refer that as what type of water? In climate change, in the climate change, I told that whenever there is a shortage of oxygen, whenever there is a concentration of oxygen is less, then we refer them as which type of water? Fast. Which type of water? When there is a concentration of oxygen decreases in that water, I call them as hypoxia. So this will create hypoxia. And this hypoxia will make suffocation to the animals. They can't move out of that areas and they die because of suffocation. And this hypoxia leads to large amount of death of marine organism, and we refer that as dead zone. So this can create a dead zone. Is that clear? And this dead zone is because of pollution. This is because of pollution. Is that clear? Anoxia. Anoxia means severe shortage. Hypoxia, anoxia. Both are important. Hypoxia, anoxia. Within these two terms, if you remember any one word also, that is sufficient. Hypoxia, very severe is anoxia. Right. So this is what we refer them as the dead zones. So this is how the dead zones are created. Dead zones. And this is seen in Gulf of Mexico. This is an example of Gulf of Mexico. And these dead zones, their productivity is very, very less, and hence they are also referred as biological deserts, where their productivity is less. or low. We refer them as biological desert. Is it clear? So please remember this: dead zones or biological desert. So here you should remember a flow. When we talk about the fertilizers and all, that will make enrichment of lake. Enrichment of lake. And enrichment of lake is referred as, or the lake when it becomes rich with the nutrients, we refer them as eutrophication. Eutrophication. And this eutrophication can lead to algal bloom. Eutrophication leads to algal bloom. Right. And algal bloom leads to hypoxia. Right. And that will lead to what we refer them as dead zones. Dead zone. Is it clear? So that's why we find many areas are there where dead zones are there. In the many parts, we find dead zones are there. See, hypoxia means shortage of water. So don't get confused. Hypoxia means shortage of oxygen. Shortage of oxygen concentration in that water, right? And anoxia means severe shortage. Anoxia means severe shortage of oxygen. Right. So please remember these terminologies. Is that clear? Right. And if you see the global phenomenon, so many dead zones are being formed in the coastal areas because of urbanization and because of the pollutants which are there. So generally we say much of the oceans are converting themselves into dead zones. Much of them are converting into dead zones. Is that clear? Right. So don't get much confused. Right. So I think the temperature parameter is clear, Pavitra. The temperature parameters. Low temperature, oxygen. So always remember, for the decomposition, bacteria is important, plus oxygen is important. Is that clear? Algae will have access to the oxygen, but it will not allow it to enter downward. So the surface will not be having problem. It will always have the downward. So that's why if any eutrophic lake is there, where it has taken the algal bloom, where it is covered by the algae, then if you visit to that area, have you visited Hussain Sagar Lake? Have you visited any such lakes which is a eutrophic lake? Have you visited in that areas? Right. So if you visit any such areas, Hussain Sagar Lake or any such areas where green color algae are there, now what type of smell you will get there? What type of smell you will get there? When you visit to these lakes which are algal blooms, right? When you visit to that areas, what type of smell? You will always get a pungent smell, dirty smell. Why? Because the dead organic has been not decomposed. It is same like a rat which has died in your room. Why? Because it has not yet decomposed. Why? Because it is not yet decomposed. So hence all these types of the lakes which are having algal blooms, they will always have the pungent smell, dirty smell. Why? Because they are polluted due to the lack of the bacterial activity. So the dead organic content will be there in the water body, and that's why they will always be having a dirty smell. Is that clear? Yes, they are there. They are there in Europe. So hence, most of the areas are converting themselves into the dead zones. That is the statement, right? And I have given them in the systematic way. Please read them. Yes, pungent smell you will get, right? Right. So hence you will find that not only in West Bengal, many areas. If you visit Bangalore also, Alsur Lake, you will find the smell. Any lake where it is having such types of the conditions. right? So this is something about the hypoxia or these, right? Now next we move on to two terms, biological oxygen demand and dissolved oxygen. Now two are different terms. Now biological oxygen demand, understand this, biological oxygen demand. Now what does this biological oxygen demand? Who does the demand and for what? So this biological oxygen demand, it is a demand, it is a demand which is made by bacteria, demand made by bacteria for oxygen. Biological oxygen demand is, it is demand made by the bacteria for the oxygen. Why? For decomposition, for decomposition of organic waste, organic waste. So that's why certain areas the bacteria will be there, but they can't decompose them. Why? Because there is lack of oxygen. So in these lakes, bacteria are present, but why they are not converting them? Because lack of oxygen, lack of oxygen, right? So if you supply the oxygen, then they will decompose them. If you supply the oxygen, then they will decompose them. So hence biological oxygen demand is a demand made by the bacteria for the need of oxygen to decompose the organic waste. Now if any water, if any water, if the biological oxygen demand is high, if biological oxygen demand is high, then that water is more polluted or more clear to drink. If the biological oxygen demand, if it is high, then the water is feasible for drinking or it is most polluted when the demand is high, right? So when the demand is high, when the bacteria demand more oxygen, so it means it is highly polluted. If it is high, then it is highly polluted, highly polluted. Now, any water which is needed for survival, any water which is needed for better living, it should have high BOD or low BOD. Any water which is ideal for drinking, ideal for surviving, it should have high biological oxygen demand or low biological demand. So that water should have low biological demand. It should have low biological oxygen demand. So please keep this in the mind. Right. Now, second one is dissolved oxygen. Dissolved oxygen. Now, any water, if the concentration of oxygen is less, if the concentration of oxygen is less, concentration of oxygen, if it is less, then we refer that as hypoxia. So hypoxia, does it supply or does it supports the life activities? Hypoxia or anoxia? Does it supports the life here? No. No. So hence, this dissolved oxygen should be high or less. This dissolved oxygen in the water should be high or less. Dissolved oxygen, right? It should be always higher side. It should be always higher side, right? So hence, any water which is feasible for drinking, it should have low biological oxygen demand and it should have high dissolved oxygen. High dissolved oxygen. Is that clear? So just if you remember this, that is more than sufficient in writing your answers. So lower the values, it is very good. Higher the values, very polluted. Is it clear? So biological oxygen demand, it assesses the pollution. It is used for assessing water pollution. Is that clear? Next, Namami Gange. So Namami Gange is a program which is associated with the abatement of pollution in river Ganga. So in the context of India, we find many rivers are polluted. Many rivers are polluted. Right. Now, when you talk about the river pollution, understand one important concept here. Understand one important concept you might have covered in your geography, right? So there is something called as E flow of a river. E flow of a river, or we refer that as environmental flow of a river. Environmental flow of a river. Have you heard about this E flow or environmental flow of a river? Very important concept. Very important concept. Very important concept. Now, answer it very fast. If you are having two types of water bodies, stagnant water and one flowing water, right? So we refer them as the stagnant and flowing water, right? So flowing, we refer them as lotic, and stagnant, we refer them as lentic, lake, etc. Now, which water body will have chances of having more pollution, lotic or lentic? Which will have chances of having more pollution, lotic or lentic, right? So lentic, it is having chances of more pollution. Why? Because stagnant water. Is it clear? Stagnant water, right? Now understand this, keeping the lotic and lentic into perspective. Now wherever when the river starts, the point from where the river originates, we refer that as a source of a river. And when the river meets to the ocean, when it meets to the ocean, we refer this as mouth of a river. We refer that as a mouth of a river. Now, this river is an example of ecosystem. This river is an example of ecosystem. And it is referred as lotic ecosystem. Lotic ecosystem, right? So it means flowing ecosystem. Right. Now, as it is a lotic ecosystem, it means that certain plants and animals depend on that. Certain plants and animals depends on that for their survival. For their survival. So hence, as the ecosystem, river is an ecosystem where it is referred as a plant and animal survive on the river. So hence, any river which is from source to the mouth, this river should maintain a minimum amount of water to reach from source to mouth. Any river in the world, it has to maintain a minimum amount of water, and that minimum amount is decided by the volume of water. Minimum decided on the volume of water. It should maintain the minimum volume of water. It has to move from source to the mouth. It has to move from source till the mouth. You can't divert 100% of river water. You can't divert 100% of river water. If there is a problem with drinking water in Bangalore, if there is a problem with drinking water in Tamil Nadu, you can't divert 100% of the Kaveri to Bangalore. You can't divert 100% of water towards the Tamil Nadu, because river is also performing its activity to make the plants and animals to survive. It's not only the human beings who depends on the river. Apart from human beings, the plants and animals also depend on the river. Who will take care of that? If you divert entire 100% of river to your consumption, then who will take care of that? Who will take care of that? So hence, it says that E-flow concept, it says that whatever may be problem in the banks, you can't divert 100% of water for your benefits. You can't use it for drinking. You can't you can't take it for irrigation. So minimum amount of water has to reach to the ocean, because it has to support the ecosystem. Support the ecosystem which depends on that. And this minimum amount of water which flows is referred as E-flow of river. This minimum water is referred as E-flow or environmental flow of river. And this has been given, this has been highlighted by an international declaration. It is not only in India, international declaration, and we refer that as Brisbane Declaration. Brisbane Declaration of 2008. So this Brisbane Declaration says that whatever may be your conditions, you have to apply that. You have to apply that minimum amount of e-flow should be maintained in the river. So this e-flow will support the ecosystem. E-flow will support the ecosystem, plus e-flow will reduce the pollution. It will abate the pollution. It will reduce the pollution. So hence e-flow is very, very important. E-flow is very, very important. Is it clear? So please remember these two terminologies: supports ecosystem and e-flow. Now, keeping these things in the mind, in India, act has been passed, and according to the act, the Ganga river is the first river in India where this Ganga river has to maintain e-flow according to the act. It has to maintain the e-flow according to the act here. Is that clear? So please remember this: e-flow and associated perspectives. Associated perspective. Now, keeping these things in the mind, we will discuss what is referred as the Namami Gange. So Ganga is also polluted because of industrial activities and all. So hence Namami Gange is a program to abate the pollution, or reduce the pollution in the context of river Ganga. So it started in the year 1986, called as the Ganga Action Plan. In 1991, it included its tributaries Yamuna, Gomati, and Damodar. Its tributaries were also included in that, right? Then, in 1995, National River Conservation Plan was launched. So it means that this program of abating pollution should be extended to other rivers. So the program was extended to other rivers. Extend to other rivers of India. Other rivers. Right. Then they needed an authority. So hence they created National Ganga River Basin Authority. And this authority was created in the year 2009 with Environmental Protection Act. Now, this is to strengthen the National River Conservation Plan. Now, the major idea of this authority is to implement the action, assess the development, to pool the resources. Resources means financial resources or materials which are required for that. Pool the resources, etc. So this is how the authority was created. And this authority was headed by Prime Minister of India. Authorities will always be headed by Prime Minister of India. Right. So this is some rough idea. Environmental Protection Act. Right. Now they wanted to restructure that and make it very strong. So hence this Ganga Action Plan of 1986, from the year 2014, it is referred as Namami Gange. They restructured that, and from the year 2014, it is referred as the Namami Gange program. Right. Now further progress of that is that in the year 2011, the National Ganga River Basin Authority was replaced. So National Mission for Clean Ganga, it replaced the National River Ganga Basin Authority in the year 2011, and this authority was in the year 2009. It was replaced by the National Mission for Clean Ganga with its two objectives. The first one is abatement of pollution and rejuvenation of Ganga. rejuvenation of Ganga. And generally it is referred as a term, right? We refer that as a pure water abatement. That means decreasing of the pollution there, right? And then maintaining e-flow, right? So this is called as Nirmal Dhara, pure water, Nirmal Dhara, and maintaining e-flow, continuous flow, Aviral Dhara, Nirmal Dhara, and Aviral Dhara, right? So these are the two objectives. Then National Ganga Council was created in the year 2016 within Namami Ganga program. Right. Then National Ganga River Basin Authority was applied, was executed, and this ended up in the year 2021. Then recently World Bank and Government of India has signed $400 million for the second National Ganga River Basin Authority. For the second National Ganga Basin Authority. Is it clear? Now, whenever when you talk about the Ganga, this Ganga River flows into certain states, and these states are referred them as the basin areas. So it flows in 11 states. It flows in 11 states, right? So it means that this Ganga has a huge percentage of its area. So it's a drainage area. When we say it covers 79% of its area in India. 79% of area in India. That is, it is a drainage area is very strong here. And hence, to abate the pollution, government has made budgetary allocation also. Government has made budgetary allocation. And this budgetary allocation, the exact value is they are made 22,500 crore rupees. And this 22,500 crore rupees will be executed till 2026. Till 2026. So this is some rough idea about the Ganga Action Plan, which is being now referred as the Namami Gange. Now referred as Namami Gange. Is it clear? Now, these are the 6 main pillars of Namami Gange programs. 6 major parts. One is the sewage treatment infrastructure, then river surface cleaning, then planting trees, then monitoring of the pollutants in that areas, riverfront development. Riverfront development, it means that there we find a large amount of crematoriums are there. You should make sure that they are to be developed very well. Crematoriums to be done. Then biodiversity should be maintained there. Public awareness, community development is to be done. Then something called as Ganga Gram, which is also part of that. Is it clear? So these are referred as the 6 main pillars of the Namami Gange program. Is it clear? Right. Now, there is something called as bioremediation and all. So I think you are having webinars. So I'll stop the class here. So tomorrow we'll continue from where we have left about bioremediation and other parts. So please revise your data, revise your content. Now here, please understand one thing. Whatever you are reading, whatever you are making effort, you involve 100% in that. It's not about approaching and living. You have to digest that. If you concentrate on your discussion, if you concentrate on 100%, then that will be effective, or else it becomes very, very difficult for you to absorb and put them into your data. Thank you. We'll meet up tomorrow.